If you host a podcast, you know this feeling. You just finished a great conversation with a guest, the recording is done, and now comes the part that nobody talks about, the production grind. You know, you've got show notes to write, social captions to produce, email sequences, topic summaries, and you're bouncing between tools, copying and pasting, formatting, sometimes duplicating pages, and hoping nothing gets lost in translation. For me, this was eating up about 3 hours every week. And although it doesn't sound like a ton, I kept thinking, I literally build systems for construction companies so they can run much more effectively. So why am I still doing all of this manually? Today, I'm gonna show you exactly how I fixed that. And not just fixed it, automated it almost entirely using a Claude skill that got connected directly to Gamma. By the end of this video, you'll have a framework you can replicate for your own podcast workflow. But real quick, if we haven't met yet, my name's Grant. I'm the founder of a company called Go First Consulting. My team and I work with residential builders and remodeling contractors who are tired of running their businesses on gut instinct and spreadsheets. My job is to help them install AI-powered systems that create predictable, scalable profitability. Systems that run without them having to touch every single thing. And that's actually the lens I bring to everything, including how I run this podcast. If it can be systematized, it should be. And what I'm about to show you is a perfect example of that philosophy in action. So let me show you what this used to look like. Every time I had a new guest booked on the show, I'd start by pulling together their information, LinkedIn profile, their website, sometimes a Podmatch profile if they booked through there. Then I'd paste all of that into Claude and run through this master prompt I built. And honestly, the prompt is really good. It would suggest 3 different topic angles with hooks, subtopics, could generate show notes, social content, email copy, all of it. But here's where the friction started. Once Claude generated everything, I had to manually take each deliverable and copy it into Gamma, one at a time, duplicating the template page, pasting in the topic, pasting in the show notes, the social captions, timestamps, then having to format it, check it, clean it up, run it through QC, and do this for every single episode. So look, this obviously isn't broken. The output is pretty great. It's pretty dope. But the process is costing me time I didn't have. And more importantly, it was costing me mental energy having to make so many small decisions, so much so that it was creating decision fatigue just on one episode. Every time I sat down to produce an episode, there was a low-grade resistance, that feeling of, ugh, here we go again. And if you've ever studied behavioral psychology, you know that friction is the enemy of consistency. If a system creates resistance, you'll eventually avoid it. And for podcasts, consistency is everything. So I ask myself the same questions I ask my clients every day. Where's the bottleneck and how do we remove it? Not patch it, not update it, remove it. The answer was sitting right in front of me. I had already built the perfect prompt. I just needed to turn it into a skill, a reusable automated workflow inside Claude that could not only generate all of my podcast deliverables, but push them into Gamma, into my website generator without me having to lift a finger. And that's what I'm gonna walk you through today, step by step, so that by the end of this, you can do the same thing for your own content workflow, whether that's a podcast, a newsletter, YouTube channel, whatever you need to be producing consistently. So let me show you what this looks like now. I've got the same starting point, got a new guest book, have his LinkedIn profile and the website, and watch what will happen. I paste in the information right here. The skill takes in everything it needs. His background, expertise, what he's built, what he talks about, and within a few seconds, it's already working through phase 1, analyzing who Bob is, what angle would resonate with my audience, and it will generate 3 distinct topic options and supporting subtopics under each one. So here is where I actually choose the topic that feels most aligned with the show I want to create. And from there, everything else gets built automatically. For this example, let's choose option 2. This is actually the moment that changed everything for me. Watch Gamma. Without me touching a single thing, the deliverables will start populating directly into the template, all through Claude. Show notes, social captions, the episode structure, all of it, right where it needs to be. No copy and paste, no duplicate paging, no reformatting. The only thing I have to do after the show records is paste in the transcript here in Claude. That's it. Everything else is handled seamlessly. Okay, so now let me show you actually how this is built, because the build itself is not that complicated. And that is the point. You don't need to be a developer. You don't even need to know how to code. You just need to understand your own workflow well enough to describe it clearly, and which, if you are already running a podcast, you already do. Everything starts with the master prompt. This is the foundation for everything that gets built out. Before I ever built a skill or even think about automating anything, I spend time getting really clear on what I need Claude to produce for every single episode. The SEO titles, the meta descriptions, the captions, the show notes, the assets, all of those deliverables. And I break them down into the 4 phases. Phase 1 is guest research and topic ideation. Here in the instructions, you can see it. Topic strategy, pre-transcript. Here's where I give Claude the guest's LinkedIn, their website, and other profile information that I have. It generates 3 topic options, each one with a hook and supporting subtopic. This phase is critical because it sets the direction for everything that follows. Get this right, and the rest of the episode basically writes itself. Phase 2 is pre-show preparation. Once a topic is selected, Claude will build out the episode structure, the intro framing, the key questions I want to ask, the narrative arc for the conversation. This is what I bring into the actual recording. It makes the interview tighter, more intentional, and way more valuable for the listener. Phase 3 is post-show production. This is where the transcript comes in. Once the episode is recorded, I paste the transcript in directly into Claude, and it will generate everything I need to publish. The show notes, a guest bio summary, key takeaways, timestamps, everything. Phase 4 is content distribution. Social captions, email copy, LinkedIn copy, everything I need to repurpose this episode across channels without having to start from scratch every single time. Now here's where it gets really interesting. Once I've had this prompt dialed in, the next step is turning it into a Claude skill. So it's not just a prompt that I have to find and copy every time. This is an actual reusable workflow baked directly into my Claude environment. Let me show you how I did that. So here's where we actually start to build the skill. Inside Claude, you're going to navigate to your skills section. This can usually be found underneath the capabilities down at the bottom here. If you haven't explored this yet, this is essentially where you can store reusable workflows. Think of it like saving a custom tool that Claude knows how to run on demand. So we're going to go ahead and create a new skill. Want to give it a name, in our case, podcaster. You want to name it something so it's immediately obvious what it does. Then you're going to write a brief description and drop in the instruction set. Using a master prompt is super easy to create a skill because the instruction set can just be replicated over into the skill. The description actually is what matters, or rather the instruction set is actually what matters because it tells Claude when to trigger the skill. So you really want to be specific. Another best practice is actually before you grab the instruction set from the prompt and bring it over into the skill, run it through this free website called Prompt Cowboy. This is just a web page that can drastically help you enhance and expand on that previous prompt. You can see this one pulled in those 4 phases, but then actually expanded on it and even asked me some clarifying questions if I wanted to take that prompt even further. Going back into Claude though, once you're happy with the final deliverable, that prompt, you can bring it into the instruction set and save it. A few other things I encourage you to think about as you're setting this up. First, be explicit about your order of operations. Claude needs to know that phase 1 always comes before phase 2, and that phase 3 only happens after a transcript is provided. Build that logic directly into the prompt so there is no ambiguity. Second, define your output format clearly. Tell Claude exactly how you want each deliverable structured, whether that's headers, bullet points, word counts, tone, style guide. The more guardrails you give it, the less editing you'll have to do on the back end. Third, include instructions for what Claude should do when information is missing. For example, if I don't have a Podmatch profile for a guest, I don't want this skill to stall. I want it to work with what it has and flag what's missing. Build that resilience in from the very start. Once your prompt is in and your skill is saved, you've essentially taken something that you were doing manually and you've turned it into a one-click workflow. That alone is a super meaningful upgrade, but here's where we take it to a completely different level. So this is the part that honestly surprised me with how easy and smooth it was to set up. All in all, I think I learned this in about 15 minutes on an AI Exchange group call this morning. So inside Claude, you have the ability to connect external tools through what are called connectors. In Gamma, the AI presentation and documentation tool has a native connector that you can enable directly from within that skill. So here's what you're going to do. Inside your skill settings, or rather your Claude settings, look for connectors. Open up that tab and you can browse for connectors. Find Gamma in this list and be sure to enable it. You'll go through a quick authentication process to link to your Gamma account, some standard stuff. Just be sure to follow the prompts. Once that connection is live, here's what changes though. When your skill runs and generates your podcast deliverables, instead of the output just sitting in the Claude chat window waiting for you to copy and paste it somewhere, it can now push that content directly into a Gamma template you've already built. A final deliverable looks and feels exactly how you want it, not just a text file. So now let me show you the template side of this. Inside Gamma, I've built out a podcast episode template that has a designated section for every single deliverable my skill produces. There's a section for the episode topic and hook, sections for show notes, social captions, email copy, guest bio, everything has a home. What the connector does is map the output from Claude to the right sections in that template automatically. So when the skill finishes generating, Gamma is already populated. The structure is already there. The content is already in the right place. All I have to do, and I want to be really clear about this because it's the whole point, all I have to do is confirm the topics look right and then paste in the transcript again into Claude after the episode record. That is the entirety of my manual involvement in this process. So think about what this means in terms of time. Pre-build, I was probably spending 45 minutes to an hour per episode just on production logistics, moving content around, formatting, making sure everything was in the right place. Now that's essentially zero. That time goes back into actually having great conversations with guests, growing the show, and serving my clients better. All right, so let me bring this back to the bigger picture for a second, because this isn't really about podcasting. This is about philosophy. Every business I work with, every builder, every contractor who comes to go first, they're sitting on workflows that are costing them time, energy, and money. Not because the work is wrong, but because the process has never been examined. Nobody has ever asked, where's the friction and what would it look like to remove it? And that's the question I asked about my own podcast production, something I run mostly for fun. And the answer was a Claude skill that connected to Gamma to handle everything except the two things that only I can do: have the conversation and make the call on the topic. Everything else streamlined. If you got value out of this, I'd love for you to subscribe, because I'm going to keep pulling back the curtain on exactly how I'm building these systems for both my own business and for my clients. And if you're a builder or a contractor watching this who's thinking, I need this kind of thinking applied to my own operation, the link in the description is where you want to start. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.